There you go.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is September 1, 2021, Labor Day. Hey, we're on Rob Grant's show. I'm probably wrong about everything. Thank you, Rob, for hosting us and being here.
My pleasure.
And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Andy Fialka. This is Laughtears number 6. Andy, how in the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jerry. How are you?
Great. I'm glad you're here. So, the first question is competition more innate or more invented? So is it in us hardwired to be competitive, or is it something that we humans invented? We'll start with you, Andy.
Um, I would have to say it's innate because we live in a world with a finite amount of resources in terms of food, water, and just natural competition requires that.
Great answer. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that the dichotomy here. I mean, there's always like there's the left and the right. So the opposite of competition is cooperation, and I think that similar to what Andy was saying is that yeah, it is innate our propensity to either compete for resources or to cooperate. And again, it's all. I think it's all kind of part of a self-preservation tactic.
Well, let's jump off on that, Rob. Is cooperation more innate or more invented?
The way I'm thinking about it is, did one come first, competition or cooperation? And I don't think that. I think that these are just innate ways that we interact with the world and the people around us in the world. So the environment and the world around us. I mean, we can either fight against nature or we can work to survive within it.
Andy, cooperation more innate or more invented?
Um, that's probably well. I'm just thinking of nature, and nature has a way of cooperating with itself. So I guess it's also innate.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I remember when you were a little kid, Andy, I asked you what was the first human invention. No, excuse me.
I
There's a
remember this question.
no. It's the question is what is the invention that had the biggest impact on humans since the beginning of time?
Yeah,
And
and my answer is agriculture.
woo, he has memory. And so explain
how
that.
old were you when you answered that question, Andy?
Oh, probably like 12.
That's a pretty good answer for.
Dude, it was really good, and I was impressed. And Andy did a tetrad on video games that blew my mind. But let's go back to that. Good memory. Why do you say that? Well, I mean, do you still hold to
Ag-
that?
I don't know about it. Probably still is the biggest, I would say, because it allowed humans to develop society and really become human without the ability to have excess food and a home, a set place where you're not moving from resource to resource. It allowed us to develop culture, art, trade, and technology, accelerated technology, or maybe it accelerated those things.
Wow, dude, you're talking McLuhan without even reading him. That's the best way. So now, Rob, how would you answer that now? How old are you, Rob?
31.
Okay, you got to jump on him. He said that at 12, you're at 31. The invention that has had the most impact on humans since the beginning of time.
Oh, man. I mean, that's $1 million question. I'm gonna say just, well, would spoken word count? Is that
Sure. We invented spoken word. Come on.
I'd
dude.
say spoken word, written word. That was
Yeah.
it. But agriculture is such a great answer because
Yeah.
we need food, right? So if
Yeah.
we have more food stockpiled, we have more time to play golf, and hence why
I,
other things were invented. Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
so I want to say, and
Go ahead.
I could be making this up, but I want to say the first written language was written to keep track of crop yields.
Could very well be.
I think in the book Sapiens, that's what they talk about, is that
Yeah.
the first thing they measured was like barley and stuff like that.
Right. And written language could be notches on the side of a log or a side on the side of your shovel because you
Mm-hmm.
know you guys mentioned golf. We're supposed to be talking about sports and politics, but this is a good intro because I think it's survival of the fittest is what our discussion started on. And it's like I ask people, is hate culturally learned or do we hate?
Mm.
Is it in us naturally to hate? Well, it depends because you got to have you got to have survival of the fittest somewhere in there because it goes back to Andy's first percepts about you know food, how much food you have, and how much food does the guy and the person in the cave next to you want to come and get your food because you have more food or they didn't get any food that day. Can you share some of that food? You know, and so that's this whole thing about cooperation and competition. Like, dude, I can see you got two piles of food. You can't spare one little pile, so then it's back to war. Is war innate or invented? Well,
Mm.
dude, we just ended a 20-year war yet. What is it today? This is a miracle in America. They'll say, dude, we're going to end the war right now. This is a miracle moment just to verbalize that, you know. So I wanted to we'll start with you, Rob. This is a quote, and I just want you to tell me how it makes you feel. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who is a hero and who is not. I can repeat it if you want, but just any comment on how that makes you feel. It's Nassim Nicholas Taleb who said it.
Well, I mean, it's a great quote. Obviously, how we usually determine a winner in sports is by the score, right? Whoever has the highest score, they win. But then there's this idea of heroes on the field, and who Duncan was talking about this and how he's like, I love watching the Olympics, but then it does the medal count, and it's like I don't really care about who's the greatest nation. I just care about seeing people compete to the best of their ability, and you could see people lose triumphantly, right? Like some people, they're losing a game, they're like, forget it, and then they get completely blown out. Whereas some people, they give it all the way in, and it's like, like, yeah, they might have lost, but spiritually they won that one or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think to answer that quote, I think sure there's some truth to it. It just depends on how you measure what victory is, I guess.
Really good. Andy, you want me to read it again or you got it?
Yeah, could you repeat it, please?
Sure. Games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who is a hero and who is not.
Um, I certainly can understand the quote. I think games are necessary in creating this facade of heroism in our society to create idols and to create celebrity. And I think there's a demand for it. So So what was the quote again? Did it replace
Well, there's a lot.
heroes?
There's a lot to the
What was the
quote.
part about heroes?
It says, in real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who is a hero and who is not a hero.
Yeah. So you always have to manufacture heroes, no matter what it is, no matter if it's propaganda or sport.
Yeah. That's good, because the guy in the Olympics a couple weeks ago, he tripped the other guy, and then what was the big deal? They both fell, they both lost, and then the guy said, "Thank you for coming and helping me get up. I'm not going to hate you for tripping me." They sort of made up immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So he came off as a good sport. But I think one of the key words in there is in real life. So we'll start with you, Andy. Is perception reality?
Is perception reality?
This is this idea when, he's this guy Talib said this quote, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. He's saying, like, we invented games to have this illusion. Oh, this team went over that team. George Carlin had that great routine. Tonight's baseball scores 5-2. He wouldn't say the team's names. He'd just say 5-2. Just it was a great McLuhan-esque thing. It didn't matter. It was just, you got to hear these numbers, So we created non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who a hero is and who is not. Well, what's real life? So is perception reality? Is what we perceive real life?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. What do you mean, is perception reality? Well, define perception.
Yeah, you win, Andy. You know what? Answering a question with a question is what we're all about.
Yeah.
That's why McLuhan got dissed as a charlatan, because he never answered questions, and he lived in a world of printed medium and in academia where you're supposed to have answers. And he was like, nah, I'm just going to go for the new, because what is perception is even a deeper question. It's, if I perceive that all three of us are on a Zoom right now and we're talking, and
right, how do you know that's real, and how do we know we're not crazy and just speaking into a mirror in an insane asylum right now?
Yeah,
I don't know.
we are crazy. Thank God Rob knows which button to push to give us the illusion we're reaching millions of hitters. We're getting millions of views. Like in 2 weeks, we'll go back to this Zoom and it'll go 5 views. I go, wow, Rob, at least we're not no views. Have you ever seen those no views? But perception is basically it's what I try to operate on all my Zooms and all my meetings is impulse, intuition, hunch, feeling, and emotion, as opposed to linear thinking, rational thinking. It's sort of the mind, head or heart. You can't separate the head and the heart, but because we invented the words, we think we can say, well, I have a hunch that this is a real Zoom right now. Or you go, no, I know it's real because John, your dad's watching me on YouTube right now going, yep, it's real. I can see my son on YouTube. Yay. Hi, John. And let's hear it for John for having the what do you call that, DNA to create you, Andy.
Yeah.
And your mom too.
Yeah, shouts out to them.
Yeah. So, is perception reality? How would you
Right.
answer that, Andy? I mean, now you sort of get what I'm going at. I mean, you can say it's unanswerable or whatever, but
I would have to say people can have their own perceptions of the world, but that doesn't make it true.
yeah,
So no.
yeah, good. Go
Have
ahead.
you guys ever read Don Quixote or familiar with that story?
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, but
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean,
Just tell
well,
us what you mean.
there you go for perception, right? I mean, in the one scene, he's battling dragons. He perceives them as dragons, but they're just windmills,
They're just windmills. Yeah.
right? And
Oh,
I
been
think
there.
that well, me too, man. And so there's a McLuhan kind of thing there too. It's like, what is our target really? Like, what are we really in opposition against? Right? Like in boxing matches, sometimes they'll say the other guy is helping him out. Announcers have said that. And it's like, what? What does that mean? They're trying to beat the piss out of each other. How is he helping him out? So again, it's like, can our perceptions, because to me, reality is what's real, what's true or whatever. And I don't think we can be illusioned for sure. Who's to say that we're not illusioned right now is kind of what we're saying.
But we have this sense by creating psychoanalysis in psychiatry and psychology that some people have disillusions and
Right.
that this guy's thinking he's fighting dragons and he's really just battling windmills, that he's living in delusion. He's delusional. And so maybe he's living in metaphor and it's going to help him acquire what he needs in life. But, we know, because the people standing around that is, dude, that ain't a dragon. That's a
Yeah, I was
windmill.
just gonna say, yeah, but if he's literally doing that, then yeah, he's delusioned.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Right.
delusional. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite answers ever was Coleman Miller, who made a fake experimental film called Uso Justo, which I highly recommend watching online free. And he said, I says, is perception reality? He says, that's all you got. See that, and it was an amazing answer because he says that's all we have is perception. We don't have like this thing on our backs that says, okay, this is going to tell me if this is true or not. We have our minds and our sensibilities to say, no, the light's red. I'm not going to step out in the street and get killed by a truck right now. So those are working things that we can incorporate. But, there's ways you could step out into the street and go whoop and just get missed by the truck because your perception was so keen that it overtook your linear reality and going, I do it every day on my bike. Bicycle
Right.
riding this like you can't ride a bike with another person in my style and go, follow me. I go, you have to make your decisions, dude. If I shoot in front of this car, don't think you can do it too because I did it and I'm the leader of our bike trip because I'm going to make risky moves, And as I get older, I'm like, dude, don't do it. It ain't worth it. Right now, what's your hurry? But there's a thing about it, because I know Andy grew up in the sports world. And Rob, did you grow up playing sports?
Not well.
but I mean, being a Canadian,
Yeah, I played hockey and baseball
you were
and stuff.
forced to play hockey in Canada.
Pretty much, yeah. Wasn't much choice there for me.
Right, but let's do that. This thing about competition, Andy, I wanted to ask you because you explained it well. You were going along in your life, and then you found wrestling. And I was curious because that is a competitive thing. It's like one-on-one. That's not really a team sport. It is like you hugging another male. That's homoerotic at its
Mm-hmm.
worst or best. But it is amazing. It's like football. But that it had, it had an impact on your life to choose that. And I was just curious because we were talking about competition. What led you into wrestling and what'd you get out of it?
What led me into it was I was too short to play basketball and not fast enough to play football. um, but what I loved about wrestling was it was one on one. You're paired up with someone your size, and it's all on you. There's no excuses. There's no ball, weird tips on balls. Maybe a ref is bad one match, but
Right.
it's all the responsibility is on you to put
Yeah.
yourself in the best spot. And that's kind of what I got out of it is
But that's
that
beautiful.
individualism.
But that metaphor for life,
Hmm.
now you became, what's your career now?
So I'm a actuary. I work for a consulting firm and I consult on large corporations' health and benefits offerings.
Right. So how directly did that aid you in becoming who you are career wise?
So the biggest thing I learned from wrestling was, just being able to put your head down, grit your teeth, and just grind out a hard task. I used to do the weight cutting where I would run laps in my neighborhood in a trash bag. And whenever I had hard course in college or even a long night nowadays, I think back and I go, this is way better than starving myself and running in circles in a trash bag. I can do this. I don't want to I don't want to do that again. I'll do this.
That's beautiful. So, Rob, tell us what you said your pursuit in sports and you not doing it. What did you learn from that for your career? So, first, tell us what your career is.
I work as a actually this is quite funny. I work as a elementary school counselor.
Right.
And
So,
so in sports, maybe I didn't really fit in. I was just like, I would much rather like not be doing this, like it's raining, it's cold, and we're playing baseball. Like, hey man, maybe if I was in Florida, I'd be down to play baseball, right? But
It's a lot
in
nicer here.
Canada, it's like, March, it's pissing rain out the whole time. It's like, this isn't fun. Then you're sliding on the ground. Anyway, so I didn't really have a connection with it.
What did it teach you for you? By the way, you must have ESP. Did you know that Andy's in Florida?
I didn't, but I'm not shocked, man. He's got the vibe going. He's got the vibe going.
Got the turtle right there.
I love the turtle, man. It was either Florida or Maui, or Hawaii.
That's
Hawaii
in the
somewhere.
that's in the Belize. My buddy actually took that picture.
No way.
Oh
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
Turtles are amazing, amazing creatures.
Turtles all the way down, but Rob,
turtles all the way down. Who said that?
but tell us, how did that
Right.
sort of
So
rejection, whereas
yeah.
told us how the sports thing led and helped him. How did that rejecting the sports lead to your career or your?
I think that it's helped me understand people who might not necessarily fit in certain groups, right? Because school is it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
There's a reason why that some kids are doing very well online, since all of us becoming partial troglodytes and having to do everything over Zoom and stuff like that. But it's really helped me to understand some people better who might not necessarily fit in the larger setting, the larger group.
Yeah, that was good, because I think that was a perfect lead, and you got ESP too, to one of the topics that Andy astutely detailed what we could cover in this session was education, what works. So, Andy, we'll start with you. You spent how many years of your life in system of education? You didn't have a choice. Your dad didn't go, "Hey, dude, do you want to be homeschooled, no school, or go to school?" They just said, "Go to school."
Dropped off.
One of McLuhan's best jokes by the great Mary Jane Schultz, who turned him on to feminism. The mom is yelling at the guy, "Get up! You got to go to school." And the guy is, that's like Earache My Eye, by Cheech and Chong. It's like, "Nah, I don't want to go to school." It's like, "Get up! You got to go to school." "Nah, I don't want to." And the mom yells third time, "Get up! You're the principal.
Yeah.
You got to go to school." You think it's a student. So, yeah, just briefly, Andy, what worked in your education and what didn't work?
So what worked was I'll say that the public education that I got in Michigan, I thought did a great job of preparing me for college and for life because of the AP classes I was able to take and the lessons I learned from it. And I think a lot of people have issues with the public education system in America, but it's a lot of it is what you get out of it, what you put into it yourself. So I took AP classes and I wasn't there just goofing off the whole time. I goofed off a little bit, fair amount, but I was learning at the same time,
Yeah.
learning my lessons at the same time. And I think I was able to find that balance and learn lessons beyond academia in those settings.
That's what worked. But to clarify one thing, I'm ignorant. What does AP stand for?
It's advanced placement, and those are the
Okay. Then,
classes where you get college credit for.
right. Okay. So now what didn't work?
So that's more of a question I want to pose to you guys is
Yeah.
what doesn't work currently, and we have an educator on, which I didn't know of. So that's great. That's great.
Yeah. No, I'm an educator too, dude. I lecture at big hotshot art colleges.
Well,
But it
in many
is,
ways, we are all educators.
yeah, we are.
Yeah.
But it is good. And so instead of answering, you're flipping it back to us, which is perfect. That's jujitsu, man. That's judo. That's what we're all about. So Rob, start off with what he did first. What worked in your education and what didn't work? And then I'll be third to answer.
Oh man, what worked? Well, I loved school. I mean, because I was good at it. I wasn't good at sports.
Well, you loved it. That's not telling us what worked. What worked in your education system?
Well, see, but here's a tough thing. Here's a tough thing. Is there were so many things I didn't like about sports. I didn't like the people. Like I could find I don't like that, don't like that, don't like that. I wasn't looking for the silver lining. Whereas at school, it was like, I'm good at this. I just like it. So a lot really worked. I mean, making friends, learning stuff that I've since forgotten, ideas like that. So what I'm saying is I have a bias towards education because I had a favorable experience there. Not to say that I didn't have a favorable experience in sports, but if I was to look at one, balancing at the scales, I enjoyed education more. So what worked for me? In elementary school, I did a lot of writing, and my teacher was like, "This is awesome," and really encouraged me to do that and gave me a space to do that. So it sort of gave me a chance to discover myself creatively, also to discover myself socially. I mean, I was a Yahoo. I asked my grade 12 English teacher out on a date if I got an A on the final exam. And I got 87%, which is an A. So I asked her, "Is this happening?" She's like, "No, that's illegal." I'm like, "Oh, okay." But See,
Hey, you got
Go
to
ahead.
hear one of my friends on the boardwalk used to snort coke with his teacher. It's like, whoa, that sounds like Southern Cal, all right.
Was he a university professor or like a high school teacher?
No, that was in high school.
Oh man, was he a
Anyway,
drama teacher?
sorry
I'm just
to-
kidding. Yeah.
Sorry to distract. Yeah.
But yeah, no. So for me, high school was a chance to.
But one thing that didn't work.
One thing that didn't work. I think that that teachers can be, it really just comes down to the teachers and what they're putting into it. Because the reason why school was so positive for me is, you know, I had this teacher who was kind of like a dad to me, sort of, right, in the absence of a father figure. But if I hadn't had that, I think high school would have been a very different experience for me. It would have been very dark. So again, there's the bias. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that is such an important, vital time in any person's life, is they're really forming their schemas of the world. Like, you know, is the world a kind place? Is it not a kind place? Does it care about me? Does it, you know, so on and so forth. So I think it really comes down to, I don't think there needs to be more money, I think, being paid to educators to make it more lucrative.
100%. I'll piggyback on that for what doesn't work. What didn't work for me was teachers who did not give a shit and just throw a packet down, and you find the answers in the book,
No
and then
connection.
they grade it, and then there's no performance to it. There's no storytelling.
There's no relationship.
No engagement, relationship. Yeah.
Wow, that was exactly what I was going to say, Andy. It was amazing that you threw it back in our court, and then you go, it's like we're playing a poker game.
Mm-hmm.
Poker Zoom. But this is what McLuhan wrote. He wrote a book called City is Classroom. And he said the real learning's outside the classroom, even though he was in academia. And, you know, he was in academia his whole life, and he was writing books his whole life. But he's known as the TV guru. Well, he wasn't saying that as much as saying we have to study every medium that comes up, and TV just was making a splash. So he's saying, well, we should study TV. And so people thought, oh, you're saying TV's better than books. He goes, no, I'm not. But both of you touched on the word like social, like the social setting, which is the environment of, like, can you pal with your teacher? Can you be friends with them and actually not have this rigid thing like, I'm going to say 2 + 2 is 22. Now you repeat that back to me. Oh, you got it right. I'll give you an A. So that is, it's not a mechanical thing. It's a fluid, organic thing, learning. And I was lucky because I got into learning right when hippies were changing it all. And they were saying, now you can have, Summerhill is what the big change was. You can have classrooms that are like real life. So in essence, if you want to be an agriculture person, you want to be a farmer, then you go hang out with the farmer all day and learn the skills by being an apprentice with them. But somewhere along the line, they said, no, you got to learn arithmetic so you can count your crops, like you were saying earlier, Andy, count how much. And then you have to know history so we know, which pesticides work and which ones will kill you. And, there's a lot to life. And we've said there's 7 of them. I don't have memorized the trivium and the quadrivium or whatever they are. You have to know these 7 topics. And so that's all fine and good, how education is developed. But now education is they're finally going, wait a minute, let's change things. And like they did in the 60s. Now, they didn't do it completely, because back to Mary Jane Schultz in Ann Arbor, she started Community High, which was nicknamed Commie High because they let the kids eat popcorn, bring their pets in, and, just party and have fun. And what did they spawn? The kid who invented Skype came out of Community High in Ann Arbor. So it wasn't a failure, but it was an experiment of sort of a free education and not so rigid. So there could be a combination of the two. You can't just change completely, maybe overnight, but we could, do that, which I experienced when I went to college. I was taking classes like camping in the winter, rock and roll. It was like camping in the winter. That's a cool class. I literally was camping in the winter. So, grandpa, our grandpa, your grandpa paid big. Well, he didn't pay
big out. Wait, what's big back then? A couple nickels a semester.
Big Al. I mean, he did. It's a phenomenon that, he's in Flint, Michigan, raising 4 kids and enabling them to go to 4 years of college each so that I can learn
to camp.
Wrong. Yeah. Like what's wrong with our education and not fight it, but flip it and say, how do I turn the breakdown of education into a breakthrough? How can I flip it? So now I can go to a college campus and talk about art, subversive art, and experimental film. And the professors are like happy because they can't say the things I can because I'm a guest and I can say, more radical things or whatever. But let's go with this. Unless Rob, did you have something to say? Because I have another thing to go into.
Well, I just think that schools are such an interesting institution that, again, going back to perception, I mean, one person could see it as like a capitalist holding cell for youth, and another person could see it as, a factory of making good citizenry, good citizenship, whatever, right? I mean, it really does come down to like, what is the purpose of education? Right? I mean,
yeah, because it's like this. It's Smartest Man in the Room, the Enron movie, where these political filmmakers made a doc and busted the Enron guys. And, all these Enron guys weaseled, or whatever you want to put, whatever verb, they did creative accounting.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot in my line of work.
Creative accounting, which is fine. And then they got thrown into country club jails. So they don't, they get their hands slapped like all bankers, or not all, but some bankers just get their hands slapped and get in country club jails. So I went up to the producer of the film once at another screening of another one of his films. I says, your Enron film was sort of like a training film for up and coming capitalists. And he goes, yeah, I guess so. Because it really wasn't, busting these guys depending on how you perceive it.
Sure. Yeah, it was busting them, but then it was showing you how to do all the crimes they were doing.
And it's just like all the hackers, all the kids, when TikTok tricked Trump into thinking he was going to have that huge audience
rally. Yeah,
that was amazing. That was like TikTok is these kids know how to use TikTok for subversive.
Wait,
they made it look like there was going to be like 8,000 people at a Trump rally, and there was only 8, but it was
8 people.
Whatever. It's
yeah. That's dope. That's great.
But it was great because it was a trip, and it's like how you flip.
Did Trump show up to this?
Yeah, Trump was there. And they sold out the TikTokers sold out the event, but they bought all the tickets, and then no one showed up.
But see, he lived in a perceptual world too, and he just said, well, something went wrong, and he told us, he can just overlook what the reality of it was. But in the mainstream press, we could go, ha ha ha, somebody flipped a tool. So this is what McLuhan said that I think we could go into. It is misleading to suppose there's any difference between education and entertainment. The distinction merely relieves people from the responsibility of looking into the matter. It's like setting up the distinction between didactic and lyric poetry on the ground that one teaches and one pleases. However, it is always true that whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So forget the middle of it. It's basically, is there a difference
Right.
between education and entertainment? And does one please more than the other? Is it effectiveness is in pleasing? And maybe even pleasing isn't the word, is affecting. Does entertainment affect us differently than education? Andy, we'll start with you.
Yes, that is a bunch of baloney in my ears.
Right. And say
Is
what?
education and entertainment the same? No. I'm constantly learning. I have to do professional exams for my career, and I'm doing, advanced statistics and mathematics, and I'm sitting there learning and doing all these problems. I in some way I wouldn't do this job if I didn't enjoy it,
Right.
but I would much rather be doing something else. I'd much rather be wakeboarding or,
Yeah.
almost anything else.
But in doing this, it allows you to do those things. The
100%.
wakeboard. Yeah.
But they're separate things.
Of
Right.
course. Yeah.
But then it is a good question though. What pleases you more in the long run? I know you're saying that rather, but you still are making decisions about time management. So you go, okay, I'm going to do this much time doing this hardcore learning and this much time doing this hardcore wakeboarding. So how do you determine, by the pleasure level, or by the, what's your bottom line decision making in your time management?
Well, now we're talking economics. Now this is all like, what's your return on my time investment? Yeah, I definitely do, I definitely think about, how much work do I need to do to be able to take as much time off as I want to.
Yeah, that's good. Your return on time investment. That's
Yeah.
good. But see, this is a key, because calling McLuhan's line a bunch of baloney is exactly what he wanted. He wanted to say something to knock you out of your comfort zone, because it is an amazing thing. Because we're going to, the next topic, which you brilliantly brought up, Andy, is, well, let's not just do sports. Let's do politics in culture. But I wanted to hear Rob, who's supposedly a budding McLuhanite. He's studying his McLuhan. But tell us, I'm just read the beginning and end. It's misleading to suppose any basic difference between education and entertainment. One teaches and one pleases. It's always been true. Whatever pleases teaches more effectively. How would you respond to that, Rob?
Well, I mean, I've often said when I was a teacher, kids are like, "This is boring," and my aphorism was, "Well, we're in the education business, not the entertainment business." But then, of course, there's shows like, the Magic School Bus, and they're done, and there is such a thing as edutainment. But at the end of the day, it's like, if we're just chasing these sort of hedonistic rewards, it's like, what's the outcome of that? Perhaps if everything is just, we're just pleasure seeking, and that's how we're learning, there might come a point when it's like, well, you might have Andy's job, and he's saying how it's like, it's a tough job. It's not, but it can be rewarding, but it's not like instant gratification all the time. And I think it's good for our brains to learn that, it's good not to gamify everything, right? Like, if, say, you went to school all day and what it was you're just playing Call of Duty, and like you're like shooting math facts or something like that. Kids are like, this is great. it's not really what the workforce is, right? So it's good to be perhaps somewhat grounded in reality as well. It's good to have a mix, but it can't just be all route either. I mean, there has to be some fun aspects to it, because otherwise you're going to have some serious attendance issues.
Dude,
you have to. Yeah.
You guys are brainwashed capitalists, man. I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well,
no,
yeah.
Through and through.
I appreciate what you guys are saying. It's really good because, you know, my hero Frank Zappa said at one point, I'm a devout capitalist, because he knew if he hit these notes and these words that kids would buy his records, and then he could use the money to create more music, because his love was just to create music. He wasn't like saying, I want to create entertainment, but he claimed he was an entertainer, but he was really out to create an art or an art form. So that was really good at what you guys did with that. And it brought up the word discipline so well. So we'll start with you, Andy. Is discipline more innate or more invented?
Is discipline more innate or more invented? I would say that's more invented. You're not born with discipline. If you were handed food and water every day, not everyone's going to do something with it.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, it's have you ever heard of the Oreo test? The Oreo test they did with kids?
Tell us about
Like
it.
the marshmallow with the 2 versus
marshmallow.
1.
Yeah, and it's like, here's one marshmallow. If you wait 10 minutes, you'll get another marshmallow. And it shows you what the kids do and stuff. And anyways, then it goes on to say that the ones that ate the one marshmallow, didn't wait for the second one, all became, drug dealers and criminals and stuff like that. But I'm just kidding. That's not what it actually found out. But it's just saying that there's a higher chance for impulsivity or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's invented. I mean, it's like low hanging fruit. We try to break it down to, I always try to think through like evolutionary psychology aspects and agriculture invented, right? These being able to create a surplus of food invented. So when we see easy outs, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go for that. That's what my brain is hardwired to do. So to do the more challenging thing, to forego the instant gratification in exchange for the long thing, I mean, that does take some serious prefrontal cortex thinking to be like, okay, if I don't do this right now, if I forego this and I get this return in 3 months, that will be a benefit. But that's not an easy choice to make. So that's my long-winded answer of saying that.
No, that was good. But let's start with you, Rob. Is the work ethic more innate or more invented?
Well, I think that kind of, for me, the hunch or whatever that it rises up is our ability to have some utility. I mean, if we're social creatures, it also means that we want to benefit those around us, depending again if it's competitive or cooperative, right? But we all do. I believe we all want to feel like we have a purposiveness, a utility.
Right. You're saying work ethic is innate.
I'm saying it's innate. Yeah.
Andy.
How similar are worth ethic and discipline? Because those are almost synonyms to me, and I would have pretty much the same answer.
Yeah, invented. So, Andy, where did you get your work ethic from?
The wrestling that I spoke about earlier, definitely a major influence in my work ethic. And then my grandfather, your dad, was a huge influence on my work ethic. World War II veteran, and he was actually a math major at Michigan and worked for Buick as an accountant for 40 years. And to see, to know what he went through in the war and to be able to turn that into a constructive career, was a great example of work ethic and discipline for me.
Really well put. Brought tears to my eyes because he was also a good ping pong player. But it is funny that my dad, Al Fialka, you can go on YouTube and watch an interview I did with him. It's really good. He did have a work ethic, but I think the beauty is he knew how to balance it with fun. You know, he says, let's have a cottage and let's have a boat and have fun water skiing. And so Rob, where'd you what age did you lose your dad, Rob?
14.
And so where'd you get your work ethic from?
I'm still trying to find it.
That's a good
Good,
answer.
Yeah. But that's BS because I put myself through college and a master's program, so obviously there had to be some work ethic. I honestly think deadlines is what gave me a good work ethic.
Dead legs?
Right.
Deadlines.
Deadlines.
Like you have to
Oh.
have this in by September
But
30th.
self-imposed, not self-imposed deadlines. You mean deadlines from authority?
Yeah, I think that's what gave me a good work ethic. I mean, I don't know. That's because I do think I have a good work ethic.
Yeah,
But again, it comes down to like this is something that I kind of want to do. So in many ways, I've just answered my own question that work ethic probably is invented.
yeah, no, I love
You
it.
changed my mind. Well done.
Well, yeah, it's beautiful. But we want it to be back to judo and jujitsu. It's always
Sure.
a push and pull. As soon as you try to nail something, like Mallarmé, the great symbolist poet, says it best: to define is to kill, to suggest is to create. So we're just trying to suggest like risk taking, courage to do something different, but stay comfortable in our plans. And if you go about down to the third paragraph on work ethic in Wikipedia, it says this could be a scam from consumer culture. I always love to read that. I was like, whoa. But I think even in the midst of, I'm at the age where people go, well, you're going to retire. I was like, retire from what? I never had a job. How can I retire? So it's like my life and my job are mixed up as possible. So I've been fortunate to squeak by, but it's not like they say this funny line, don't take your job home with you. Well, if you do what a lot of wise philosophers do, is you get your job and your life as mixed up as possible, there's no difference. Then you're always, and that's a big deal with the way COVID changed the workspace, where people are doing work all the time.
Yeah, this is my work. I'm on my laptop right now.
Right.
This is where I spend 10 hours a day at least.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. So you did ask another question, Andy, which we sort of bypassed on education. Is higher education worth it? And that was just a basic question. And how would you answer it?
I think it's worth it as long as your degree can get you a high paying job. I
Right.
think, you know, back when you went to school, do you remember how much your tuition was for a camping class? Not to pick on you, but
I have no idea. I mean, we could look it up, but
if someone told me they were taking a camping class at college nowadays, I'm like, what are you going to do with that? Go be a park ranger? Do you need to go to college to do that? It's a lot of money.
Right. But it is funny because I know what you're talking about is kids nowadays, if they have any brains and they want a high paying job, they're just going to learn coding. And do you really have to go to college to learn coding? You could probably learn it online faster than going to college. But to get social skills on how to get the job, like you said, maybe going to 4 years of college. I always say my 4 years in Ann Arbor going to college were the best years of my life, in that I was learning how to live outside my parents' home.
Yes.
Now you have to live on your own in a dorm. And so, Rob, is higher education worth it?
Well, there's definitely an elitist aspect of higher education. Andy was talking about the price of things, right? And like this is just one that comes to the top of my head, but these Ivy League universities like Harvard and stuff like that, it's like there was no way I was getting into that college. I can't afford unless I got a scholarship for sports. And well, we all know my history there. But that's the problem, is that the universities can be elitist. And if you can't pay your way to get into it, how can you get yourself out of, say, the financial rut that maybe your family's in, right? So that's why, not to sound like a socialist Democrat or anything like that, but it would be nice if there was, I know in the States are talking about reparations. Well, what if you're below a certain economic line that you get a really good tax break on your higher education? Because it's a business. Anybody who tells you that higher education is not a business has no idea the amount of money that goes into that.
Oh
It's
yeah.
crazy.
What being in the States, what I would want is the same level of federal and state support in the higher education that my uncle got.
Yeah.
When did you graduate? Just 15 years ago, Jerry?
I graduated in the year the 1976, the whatever they call that, in regards to American history. So I went in 72, graduated in 76, but I stayed in college for 4 years, hanging out on campus, showing films to the students and
Mm-hmm.
taking film classes without paying, just sitting in. So I basically did 8 years of college. And yeah, that was way pre running up college debt, which became a huge phenomenon for whatever the last 20, I don't even know how long that's been a phenomenon. But yeah, it was I was in state, so it probably wasn't that expensive.
Yeah. So, and what you were talking about earlier with the whole rethinking school of, if you want to be a farmer, go hang out with the farmer. That's becoming even less and less common with these internships and entry level positions. It's becoming harder and harder to get an entry level position nowadays, even with a college degree, because no one wants to train someone right out of college. They want someone else to do it. So
Wow.
now master's degrees are becoming more common
I
because this exchange of, this training is no longer benefiting the company. So they're saying, why should we do that? Why shouldn't someone else train and we just poach them 3 years later? And
That's happy.
mm-hmm.
That's really good you brought that up because
so so it's not just colleges. It's it's companies, and it's just the corporate environment that has become in the last century.
yeah. No, it's really changed, and it's important for us to study how and why it changes. Because you said a word earlier that I really loved, Andy, was speed up, or you said something, and I always go up to financial advisor, and financial professionals, and go, what caused the 2008 financial crises? And they'll go blah blah blah, greed, or this or that, or this or that, or Madoff caused it, or they give me all these. I says, how about information speed up? Was there any factors of that involved? And they'll go, never thought of that. And if humans have basically communicated three ways,
Sure.
gesture aside, spoken word, printed word, and electronic word. Electronic word is speeded up everything. So that's the same thing you're talking about is, well, I can go to college for 4 years. Now I can go get my master's. How can I speed that all up to get my job? And can I actually just do it on my own watching YouTube videos, and will they give me that accreditation? Like you can't go in and say, I know how to do all this, can you?
Yeah, 100%. You can learn all the information for free on the internet, and you could learn everything that was in my degree on your own. But who says who that you know those things?
Right, but
You need that accreditation.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need,
yeah, yeah,
that's what I was just going to
yeah.
say, that accreditation. So your
There's
answer,
there's a degree of authority in these
yeah,
institutions.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so is higher education worth it? Yes. So, your second thing before we go into politics and pop culture was transition into adulthood in America. Now,
Hmm.
that's an amazing thing, because that's sort of like backtracking from, you going to high school, both of you guys going to high school, going to college, and then what is adulthood? Why did you ask that question, or why'd you bring that up, Andy? What does that transition into adulthood mean to you?
Um, it it's really just because it's kind of I'm going through it right now. Um, After graduating college, I didn't feel like an adult quite right away because I was still living at home. I had to work a job and stay at home. That wasn't a great job. And it wasn't until I got a better job and was able to have my own apartment and pay my own bills that I really felt like an adult.
Hmm.
And
Right.
then paired with that was for me moving to across the country from Michigan to Florida and really having not a lot of support, and you know everything's on you. You got to make sure your bills are paid, you got to make sure your car doesn't break down, who's going to come help you out if your car breaks down, that kind of thing. And then building a network of friends and people to help you out, that and I'm curious what that was like for you, Jerry, and what it's like in Canada for
That's
you,
a
Rob.
great question. Rob, you want to go first, or you want me to go?
No,
Yeah,
you
so
go, Jerry.
when did you first feel like an adult is my question.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And no one ever asks me questions. I always hijack these podcasts and ask all the questions. So
Well,
I
you haven't
appreciate.
had a Fialka on here yet.
Dude, we got to hit the mat. Hot oil med wrestling.
Oh, bring it on.
Yeah. But it's interesting because, you know, the cliche now is a joke that I like to tell people is the kid goes up to the parent and says, "Are you absolutely sure you won't support me for the rest of my life?" The kid says that to the parent. Now, both of you guys laughed. Most people I say that to, who are kind of my age or in their 40s or 50s, they don't laugh. They go, "That's not funny." I'm going through that because the
My
cliche.
dad's not laughing at that joke.
Yeah, we have the chat purposely cut off so John can't make a snide remark. But it is, you know, we didn't have that. It seemed when I was turning 16
Hmm.
and 17, we were like, dude, I can't wait to get out of here. And it wasn't like financially more risky or harder. It seemed as though we could just get jobs, rent apartments, and get our car paid for or whatever, and live on. And then you chose how much you wanted to pursue what kind of stratus in life.
Hmm.
So, I was leaving the home 2 summers before I left for college on these hitchhiking trips where I hitchhiked around the complete country, and that was really good for me because it taught me, it's sort of how to live on the street with a backpack. And then I had a job in Seattle teaching at a summer camp for 2 weeks. So it sounded like a scam, like I had some sort of job. And,
to get out, so Al would let you out of the house.
well, it
This
wasn't
is why you took camping in the
You
winter.
just went.
yeah, he goes, well, you took camping in the winter. Go ahead. I'm sure you can camp in the summer too. So that's funny. But I have to tell you, you know, our cousin was a priest. I love to tell this story. And he was just new in his parish in Seattle. And I got to sit there and stay at his digs for a night or two. And I sat there with the head of the church and Father Richie and me. And this woman was waiting on us with salmon dinner. And it was amazing. And I felt like a hotshot. And the head priest says to Richie, he goes, now you're new here in the parish. The mob, you know, the mafia is in our parish, so don't mess with them. And he's saying it in front of me. And I'm like, wow, this is the real world, you know? So that's sort of what I jumped into the real world. And then I was able to live in a dorm for 4 years and then an apartment, or no, dorm for a year or two, and then an apartment for 8 years. And then I decided that after engaging in the film world through the Ann Arbor Film Festival, that I could come to LA and, you know, work. My goal was to work for Frank Zappa and help him with his films. And it worked out. So, I mean, I guess it wasn't so much a conscious thing as an organic flowing thing. I don't know how much I thought about it, but of course I had, you know, some sort of sense like you have to make this much money and, you know, to be able to transition into adulthood. And then what does adulthood mean? You know, because you go to college to party basically, and you know, you pick your college by, is it a real heavy party school or not? And it's not like you only go to college to party, but party means to learn how to be social with other people, you know, and learn how to, you're plopped into a dorm room with someone of not your choice. How do you adjust? I mean, one of the great moments, speaking of Big Al and Dolores, my parents, your grandparents, is I'm in the dorm. I have a woman overnight with me, and they come to hang out with me on a Saturday, and they knock on the dorm
In the
room, and
morning.
yeah, and she walks out, and they're like, "Whoa," you know, and they knew how to not make too big of an issue out of it, and it was pretty amazing. So, I mean, I guess I was pretty fortunate to have parents who were understanding about, and I think your dad and mom are too, in understanding what becoming an adult is and how much you want to hang on to being a child. Because I'll
Yeah.
just sum up with this. Sorry to go on and on, but I'll sum up with this: is that all artists, and I won't claim I'm an artist, but I'll claim that I'm a fake artist or a wannabe artist. All artists are trying to get back to being child and have the innocence of a child to create art without too much head trip. Like, and so that's the amazing thing. Andy, I imagine you still want to hold on to your childness and be a wakeboarder and have slack and have a good time and not just say I have to work all the time, but your wording was perfect. The return on your time management. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say is the transition into adulthood is, you know, in like highbrow terms, it's return on time investment. And in lowbrow terms, it's like, how can I still have the kid in me have fun? You know?
Man, you hitchhiking around the country, that's such a foreign, like, that's such from another time
Yeah.
for Rob and I. That's just
Yeah.
like nuts.
No, and it was lucky that we could do it because I have some amazing, I have one friend that picked me up in Colorado and we're still friends. And so that's 50 years ago. And so it's an amazing phenomenon. And you know, it comes right out of Jack Kerouac and On the Road, in that whole sort of sensibility from the Beats to the hippies and, you know, to whatever Burning Man people are now or millennials. So Rob, talk about your transition to adulthood, because you are still engaged in childness in a way because of the kids you work with for your job.
Yeah, I mean, so like, what's the rite of passage to becoming an adult? Correct.
That's a
That's
good
kind of
way to
what I'm
put it,
picking
too.
up.
Yeah.
And it, I think it's almost like a reflection of what our culture is about, is whatever that rite of passage is. So I imagine that when we're hunter gatherers, I assume that our rite of passage as, men, right? Because that's what I am. I'm a man. I would have been seen as probably a man in a hunter gatherer society. My rite of passage probably would be killing an animal. That's a guess. Now we live in, I don't know. I don't have a time machine, but let's just, for argument's sake, let's say that's what that was then.
Yeah.
Now we live in a very different world. We're in the age of invention and all these things. It almost seems like the rite of passage is very, very relative to the individual, I think. And it sounds like for Andy, his rite of passage was when he was out of the house, and he had to, because he graduated from high school, but he was still home, and that didn't feel like he was now an adult. It wasn't until he finished, or was it that you were in university, or that you'd finished university and moved to Florida?
I had to move back in for a year after university.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I bet that must have been pretty strange too, is because you've gone from having these freedoms to,
that was horrible. It was absolutely
right.
horrible.
Hence why it was a
It's horrible.
short-lived,
Yeah.
experience.
And even in college, I was on my own, but I didn't as much feel like an adult because my parents are still paying for all my shit.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, people who say, "Oh, money doesn't matter," but that is the language that we use in this culture, this society. That's what we barter with, is money. Be it cryptocurrency or whatever. That's how we're doing our exchanges. Before it was beans, or grains or whatever. Now we use money. So I do think that having financial security is part of feeling like you've made a transition to an accomplished adult. Maybe not necessarily,
Was that important for you?
Well, I guess my rite of passage is so back and forth because, when your dad passes away, that's a really weird experience, right? Because, there's this patriarchal figure, that has all this wisdom and stuff. And now they're gone. And you're like, okay, now I got to figure it out. But I'm still living at home with my mother, who is a wonderful lady, but she's kind of like, what's going on? Right. Until I moved out. So kind of like you, it's like, there's these transitions. It's like, are we ever really an adult, or are we always, children in some regard? And I think in my own experiences is I've learned to manage. I can't let my inner child die. If I do, I'll be a miserable person. And it's the inner child that has such joy and curiosity and, humility, I guess. And so I don't know if I've fully transitioned into being an adult, to answer that question.
Great answer.
Yeah. Because you sort of tackled two things: the Peter Pan syndrome and the rite of passage. But did you go to 4 years of college and you lived at home?
I did. But even my experience of living at home was very different because my mom she travels a lot, right? So it was like my experience was very unusual.
I see.
Yeah. And maybe not so unusual, but it just, comparing it to what you guys have shared,
but it
wasn't linear.
Yeah. Did she remarry and did you have a stepdad?
No.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Hey man, if she could wakeboard and hitchhike, she would, man. She's a free spirit. My mother is, right?
So we got to do a podcast with her. So
oh yeah, she'd be like, what the hell is this?
Look at this is perfect. We got about 15 more minutes to tackle what was brilliant, Andy, going politics in sports to politics in pop culture.
Yeah.
So
Is
I mean,
15 minutes going to be enough time? Well, I guess
yeah, well,
we'll have
look,
to make it work.
if it doesn't work, we'll have Andy
Part
back.
two.
I mean, that's no problem. But again, Andy, tell us your through line when you got involved in politics, in studying politics. I mean, because I was going home to see your dad, Jon, and you would be a fan of, I think, Jon Stewart. And,
Jon Stewart, yeah.
yeah, and this was like, for me, this was a phenomenon that really made a big impact on me because this was right when, Michael Moore was just on talking about his film, which is the biggest grossing documentary ever, Fahrenheit 9/11, all about war. And last night I saw a good 20-minute piece on him and Ari Melber, who I never really understood. He's from University of Michigan, really good news guy, really articulate, and he handled talking with Michael well. And Michael's a Michigander too. And it was when his film Fahrenheit 9/11 premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in France, Jean-Luc Godard, who's one of the greatest film people ever, said, "Your film's going to help Bush get elected." Now, it didn't necessarily help Bush get elected, but it galvanized pro-Bushers. So he made an agenda film. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to turn the news into a pop film, and I'm going to slant it. And documentarians are like all pissed at him and they hate him. It's like, no, he raised the bar on documentaries. You don't have to like what he said or dislike it, but he made a pop film. So people were watching the
Right.
news and eating popcorn, going to the movies to watch the news. And so that's what I found was a big thing to ask people going to the film festival every year. Does fake news, which is what Jon Stewart was called before fake news got demonized. It was called satire news. So it was basically, I grew up, and that was the week that was, which was Mad Magazine Sensibility, which was Jon Stewart many years ago. They took the popular news stories and turned them into jokes. And Johnny Carson did it his whole career. He would joke
SNL
about,
did it. Yeah.
yeah. And I loved your crossover politics and sports because I copped an attitude for many years. I said the reason there's a sports bar on every corner in America is so the government can pull the wool over your eyes and you go and you drink beer and get lost in sports and you don't care about how the government's running you.
Oh,
And
100%.
right, but I'm glad
And now people get pissed off when you inject sports into or politics into sports.
sports.
And
But
I had a great conversation with my hairdresser. I said she doesn't watch the NFL anymore because it's, politics is so involved in sports and everything. And I'm like, you watching the same game I'm watching? It's like hardly in it. And
right.
to say that sports has always mirrored politics with Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali. Like throughout sports history, it's always mirrored politics.
Roman gladiators.
Roman gladiators. And to say that it's upsetting now is just, you're not upset with politics in sports. You're upset with the politics that's shifting.
That's really well put. A great observation, Andy, because what I realized was no, it's a shifting and there's a lot of gray areas that guys might go to the corner bar, drink beer and only care about sports, and then they end up talking politics because the sports might be boring. So it's not exclusively getting the wool pulled over their eyes with sports. It's that whatever unites people and they find a commonality to talk about is a good thing. It's a good thing to care about what's the sport team's sports. If you don't like that, you can just nod and go along with it and go, oh, okay, you know, the Dodgers this, or, you know, the Red Wings that. But it is an interesting phenomenon that attracted you. And I'm curious of what was it, Andy? Was it Jon Stewart doing comedy? Was it comedians and then it leaked into politics? Or what's the through line for you there that you eventually started saying, Jerry, I listen to political podcasts now?
Yeah, it's 100% was Jon Stewart growing up. My dad loved watching Jon Stewart and turned me on to him. And me getting into it was when Jon Stewart and Colbert were back to back on Comedy Central. And that hour of just calling out the hypocrisy in all of politics was the most refreshing thing. And just calling the BS where they see it.
Well, that's amazing, because that's my big question is, does that type of mixing of politics, hot political issues, and comedy more activate you or more pacify you?
It more activates me.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Rob, tell us your through line. When did you get into politics and being aware? And like the words were great, Andy, calling out hypocrisy in politics.
Oh man, that's a good question. I think I've always been, I always associated here we go full circle with a rite of passage in adulthood. When I was in kindergarten, I would watch the news. I had no idea what the hell was going on, but I just thought that's what adults did, and I wanted to be an adult. So I'd watch the news on my Fisher Price table, eating Scarios or whatever, and just being like, whoa, like a lot of people seem to die and stuff, because it's always, bad stuff. When O.J. Simpson was on the highway, running away from his white Bronco, I remember talking to my grandmother on the phone and saying, Bart Simpson is on the highway and he's running away from the police. And my grandmother was like, what are you talking about? That's O.J. Simpson. I'm like, that's my brain. Like I don't know who O.J. Simpson is. I know who the Simpsons are. I know who Bart Simpson is. He's always getting into trouble. So that's where I made that connection, that it was Bart Simpson running away. I had no idea why. So I guess, we've always been interested in there's a thing called FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And I think that politics really works well in, you don't want to miss out on this. Oh my God, did you hear what the Kardashians did? And I used to be all about that. Like, yeah, I want to know. And it's still very activating, like Andy's saying. But there comes a point when it's like, have you guys ever been to a heavy metal concert?
Yeah.
There's a mosh pit. And it's, for those listening who have never seen a mosh pit, it's a bunch of people just beating the piss out of each other for no reason. It just starts.
Wait, Bob, hold on one second. When I first saw mosh pits, I called up Andy's dad and I said, John, there's a thing you do in hockey, and it's called, when you slam the guy against the boards?
Cross check
him, throwing elbows.
Yeah. That's what they do in rock shows now. That's what the punks do. They're like hockey players.
Right.
So go ahead, make your point. What are you going to say about the mosh
pit? So a mosh pit, it's like, it doesn't make a difference if I'm in there or not. It's going to keep going. It's going to be a melee. If I get in there, I'll have a good time. I might chip my tooth. I've chipped my tooth at a mosh pit before. Anyways, but I can't stay in there the whole time. I'm going to get a concussion. I'm going to really hurt myself. I'm going to be super disoriented. And to me, the way that I see politics and the way that all this hype bullshit works, it's like a mosh pit. It's like, I need to have some critical distance from this, but I also like getting close to it occasionally. Yeah. And but I know that these things 100%. Are going away.
That's how it works in America. It's this.
Yeah, it wants to get you revved up. It doesn't care about your feelings, except for the fact that it incites your feelings.
Yeah,
it wants to cause and emotional response. That's what I get from it. And I even watch some of the advertisements on YouTube, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is heavy-handed. Pardon my language.
Yes.
But like, I don't like that, like Bridgertown. I'm not an idiot. I know what the title's saying. It's a bridge between two towns. One town being the uppity white people, and the other town being colored people, black people, right? It's like, I know what you're trying to wake me up to, but I see the agenda, and it's just so obvious, and I feel like you're insulting my intelligence. Piss off. I'm just saying, like, this. So who I really like is Bill Maher. I'm not even saying
Bill Maher. Yeah, I like Bill Maher sometimes, but he's a bit of a piss off. Is a good word. Yeah,
because he's coming. I mean, we have to be real with our privileges. I mean, we have to be real with the advantages that we've been given in life. Not everybody has the same chance. You know what I mean? Not everybody has the same environment, which is why I say I believe reparations are important, at least in terms of education. Give people more of a chance to get themselves ahead, and that will change the things. That will change the culture. But where I'm going with this is, like, it's kind of heavy-handed, and it seems like it's more performative rather than it's like profound change, right?
Yeah, and I'm interested in the performance of the comedians. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing because there's levels again that comedy, like Lenny Bruce, who's the godfather of all these guys, spawned this sense of, can we change culture with entertainment? That's back to education and entertainment. They might not always, like, just read the lyrics to Frank Zappa's song, I Am the Slime from Your Video, and it is completely, just Google it and read these lyrics. It's amazing. Now, did it have an impact on some people? It might have raised their consciousness. It's like what Andy said, call out the hypocrisy. And then what do you do with that when the hypocrisy is called out? How do you turn that into action? I was a big fan of Black Lives Matter, and I went out on the street and walked with them, and it was all white yuppies, and it was like, I'm happy. But it's, again, did it do anything? Yes, there were things, and they're still going, and they are doing things about people in jail and about paying your rent, and they are doing things that are actions. So that's what's important to me, is not let it just sit in the entertainment realm and get people to laugh, but actually help turn them into activists and do something. So we don't know if we can do anything. Does voting work? Is another great topic. But I think what you brought up, Rob, was a good way to close out here. Is there's a great article that I've circulated often, and I'll send it to both of you. And it basically says that, the news creates this phenomenon that we want to do what you talked about, Rob, is what it's looky-loo, like what's going on, like what happened today, and we want to return to that. And it has some physical endorphin thing with us. It's just like clicks, likes on all those kind of things. And we know that physically they're affecting us, and mentally and emotionally they're affecting us. And it's like, the bottom line of this article is, I got out of it, the question is conflict the human condition? So we'll start with you, Andy. And then, what I mean is, what in really, I used to couch the question was, is there a human condition? It's sort of a cliche thing. The human condition is this. And it's easy to say conflict is part of the human condition. So you can take it and put it in any context you want. But basically, I'm asking, how much is conflict part of the human condition?
I don't think conflict needs to be part of the human condition, but I think um it can be an incredible motivator. And you look at points in history of when people have been united, and the most united you can get is when you have a common enemy. And
Yeah.
when there's conflict forcing your hand on something.
Yeah. It's really well put. Thank you. Rob, is conflict the human condition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, we've been pursuing peace for a very long time. We're
Yeah.
still pursuing it.
Yeah.
Question for you. I'm sorry. I
No,
got to
don't.
throw it back. So,
Yeah.
again, I mean, entertainment, news, politics, all these things, it distracts us arguably from ourselves. So, this desire to be distracted, is that innate or is that invented?
Yeah. I would say it's to separate innate and invented is a stupid thing that I always bring up because you can't
This guy does this for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then once he gets asked
This
it, he's like,
whole thing.
what a stupid question.
it's because let me back that up.
I'm hanging up, Jerry.
Yeah.
It's because you can't do a tetrad, the 4 questions McLuhan came up with, which are just universal questions. You can't do a tetrad on things humans didn't invent. Like you can't do a tetrad on a tree. We didn't invent a tree, but you can do a tetrad on wood. Like people go, what's the first human invention? They go, fire. I goes, we didn't invent fire. We invented fire management or how you start a fire
Sure.
or harnessing fire.
Yeah.
So, distraction is definitely both. You can't separate them. It's called epigenetics too. It's like once we got it in our human bodies that we're hungry, then humans invented breatharians who supposedly can survive by breathing alone. That sounds like pseudoscience, but it doesn't mean we can't try. So it's not like distraction can be a good thing. So
Yes.
in essence, what I'm getting down to is what McLuhan's taught me through James Joyce is that everything humans invent have services and disservices. So if we invented distractions, it sort of carries the baggage that it's a bad thing. Oh, you're distracted. When I talk to my friends on Venice Boardwalk, where I'm going to ride my bike right now, I go, dude, I live half my life on Zoom and half my life live. We're doing a live Zoom right now. And I frame their face in a Zoom screen. And I say, see, we're giving eye contact to each other. But then their eyes look off. In a Zoom, most of the time, we haven't looked off. We've been more attentive.
It's
And
because it's because I'm just looking at myself this whole time.
right. And it is
When you
amazing.
got me front and center, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. And it is like that's the distraction. Like think of humans
That is
inventing
kind of weird, actually. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
the best is read Narcosis, narcosis as narcissism as narcosis. The word narcissism comes from numbing. Everything we invent numbs us. And what Andy just brought up was the phenomenon of the mirror. We invented the mirror, but in essence, the mirror is in nature. It's water. And if you can go over a river and look at and see yourself in a river or a lake or a pond, that's what a mirror is. So then humans goes, well, we can make it. It's called biomimicry. So then we made mirrors, but they already existed. So it's a legitimate question to say, is it innate or invented? But it's forever morphing. Like, how much did we invent eating food? Well, we did.
Sure. Yeah.
But we didn't really say we have to eat because we learned how to fast. So we countered the innateness of eating by saying, I'm going to fast. but then maybe after a day or two, you have to start eating again. So a distraction is a deep thing. And what I would say is part 2 of this, because I love our the name of our podcast today was Is Culture Our Business? And it was named after McLuhan's book, Culture is Our Business, you know. And that's a funny name because what is culture? And, you know, we're all in the business. You know, you're in the podcast business, Andy's in his business, I'm in my business. And how does culture become business and how does business become culture? And is that all a big distraction? I mean, the bottom line was, is politics a branch of the entertainment business? Of course it is. Well, is that good or bad? Well, no, we don't want to make a value judgment. We'll say, how do we cope with it? You know, like Michael Moore turning the news into a pop movie. People go, that's horrible. He slanted it. And it's like, well, maybe not. He enlightened people to think about an issue and not just live the hero's journey and have a drama, you know. So sorry to go yapping on and on. So you guys wrap up with your final statements so you can say, Jerry, you tricked us. Go ahead, Rob. What's your final? You want to wrap up?
Oh, it's been a pleasure to meet your nephew here, Andy. He's a brilliant young dude.
He's my granddad. What do you mean, man? He taught me a lot.
There you go. Yeah. Well,
in the true tradition of Al Fialka, that was good. Andy, any closing comments? Really a pleasure having you here today.
It's Jerry, you know, I love your deep, insightful questions, and yeah, it really made me reflect on myself and where I am and where our culture is.
Yeah. So let's book another one soon. In the words of Marshall McLuhan, communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. And Rob and Andy, you proved it. Thank you.
All right.
Salute.